Tigers add 2 more via the transfer portal. So who's next? Talking about it. Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. Today's episode is brought to you by the College Football Playoff, which is here, and you don't want to miss a moment of the action. The College Football Playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games, December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. Tigers add 2 more via the portal, so who is next? And the LSU men's and women's basketball teams both roll on Tuesday. We'll give you a little thumbnail recap. Let's start with the work that the Tigers did in the portal and what they continue to do, adding 2 receivers on Tuesday, Destin Hill transferring in from Florida State, and Nic Anderson, the big one, transferring in from Oklahoma. If you missed it, did a full emergency bonus episode just on the Nic Anderson news. You can catch that on this YouTube channel or this podcast feed, just the previous episode if you want to check it out. Let's go chronologically. We'll start with Destin Hill. Destin Hill is a really interesting one. Because there's undeniable potential and ability. There's just no production. So it's a little bit of a flyer, but one that could pay off in a big way. So I'll remind you about Destin Hill. At one point, Destin Hill was committed to LSU under Ed Ogeron. He was actually a member of the 2021 signing class. Now, he ultimately signed with Florida State in 2021, but didn't actually enroll at Florida State for 2 years until 2023. Never disclosed why he spent 2 years away from football. And there's no record of it anywhere. But it was, as it was told to me, he didn't spend 2 years at summer camp. We'll put it to you that way. He was a minor, so there wouldn't be a record of any record. Let's put it that way. I'm treading carefully because there is nothing official. No one's ever spoken about it, and there's nothing official. But maybe let's just say Destin Hill ran into some issues that would keep him away from the field or society. I'm treading very carefully. Anyway, bottom line is, hat tip to Destin Hill, okay? Ran into some issues, persevered, and enrolled at Florida State ultimately in 2023. And as a freshman in 2023, Hill played in 10 games with 2 starts, but he had ankle and hamstring injuries that kind of limited him in that season. Then in 2024, in the spring, so 23 was the year where Florida State goes undefeated. And they lose, everything happened that we know at the end of that season. So coming into 2024, there was a lot of expectation with Johnny Travis going to the NFL along with Keon Coleman. So they had a big time opportunity there for receivers to step up in 2024. But Destin Hill gets injured. They never disclosed the nature of his injury, but he was often seen on crutches and with a large brace on his knee. We can kind of put 2 and 2 together. He missed the entire 2024 season. I went back and read his high school comp from Barton Simmons, then of 24/7, now Vanderbilt, but compared Destin Hill to Tyron Johnson. If you remember, Tyron Johnson was a 5-star out of Warren Easton in New Orleans, came to LSU, couldn't get on the field, went to Oklahoma State and had a really productive career at Oklahoma State. But that was the comp that they gave Destin Hill coming out of high school. Whenever they landed Destin Hill, I looked and I wrote this down. And as of Tuesday, late morning, whenever they added Destin Hill, LSU had 10 receivers on the roster for 2025. You have Aaron Anderson, Chris Hilton, Xavier Thomas, Kyle Parker coming off of injury. You signed Teron Francis and Phillip Wright in this class. Then Kyle and Bill Yacht, Jelani Watkins are freshmen that redshirted this year. That's 8. Then you've added, of course, Barian Brown, the game breaker from Kentucky, the speedster from Kentucky, dynamic return man as well. And then you added Destin Hill. That's 10. And 10 is plenty enough. The numbers there are fine. But there's 2 things you're lacking in those 10. Aaron Anderson was great, was your second leading receiver this year, total gamer. Barian Brown, we've talked about, was a legit number 1 at Kentucky, but just played in a very poor offense. Chris Hilton, if he could stay healthy, is certainly a deep threat for you. Some of the young guys we're excited about. But there's 2 things you're lacking. Number 1 is a true number 1 receiver, a true Malik Neighbors, a true Jamar Chase, a true number 1 first-round draft pick, game-breaking receiver. And number 2 is size. Because of the 10 guys I mentioned, the biggest receiver of them is Barian Brown, transferring in from Kentucky. He's 6'1". Now, we could add an asterisk there and throw in Trey'Dez Green, who's signed as a tight end. Mid-season, they kind of moved him to sort of this hybrid receiver role, kind of started spending more time with the receiver. So 6'7" certainly helps the averages a little bit. But is Trey'Dez Green a receiver? Is he a tight end? Figure it out. But I'm just talking about specifically receivers. And there's one guy in the portal that solves both of those. And Tuesday night, LSU landed him. Nic Anderson from Oklahoma signed with LSU. It's not a commitment. It is formal signing. LSU has announced Nic Anderson signing. Cortez Hankton celebrated on Twitter as well. Let me tell you about Nic Anderson. And again, I'll remind you, there's a full episode just on the Nic Anderson signing. If you want to go get more detail on Nic Anderson, just on this feed, the previous episode, you'll see it there. In 2022, Nic Anderson was a 3-star, signed with Oklahoma, played in just 3 games. In 2023 at Oklahoma, he went kaboom. Played in 13 games, started 6, had 10 touchdown receptions, which was an SEC freshman record, 10 receiving touchdowns. He averaged 21 yards per reception, 31 catches, 10 of them were touchdowns. 1 out of every 3 receptions went for a score, and he averaged 21 yards a reception. There is your legit number 1 game-breaking receiver. Oh, by the way, he's 6'4", 219 pounds. Size, game-breaking ability, true number 1 receiver. Check, check, check. And all of a sudden, now you have the best quarterback in the SEC going into 2025. You have by far the best receiving core. Alabama with Ryan Anderson may have the best receiver, the best singular receiver, but best receiving core with Nic Anderson, Barian Brown on top of Aaron Anderson, and then all the other depth that we mentioned, you by far have the best quarterback receiving core in the SEC. I love, of course, having Caden Durham back. Caleb Jackson still hanging around. You're bringing in 5-star Harlem Berry, the number 1 running back in the country, not to mention JT Lindsay. You just signed an elite portal tight end in Bauer Sharp. I look around and I go, man, this offense is explosive. It's missing one thing, an offensive line. So now that you've added Destin Hill and Nic Anderson to go along with Barian Brown, 3 portal receivers, you've added the tight end you desperately needed. You got Nussmeier back. What do we do about this offensive line? All right, the Tigers are addressing that, and we'll talk about it when we continue. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's number 1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Y'all, I've been telling you about Prize Picks for quite a while now. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. And Prize Picks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because this holiday season, Prize Picks is also giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pixmas. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discount select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. It's so easy. Check it out. Make sure you download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Okay, so we know LSU has done incredible work in the portal so far. 9 additions. And not only 9 additions, but 9 impact additions. I want to remind you that a year ago, LSU added 9 players via the portal. The highest rated player from the portal class a year ago was CJ Daniels at number 101 overall. Right now, just looking at 24/7, you can look at On3, you can look at any of them. But 24/7 has Nic Anderson, number 10 overall, Barian Brown, number 18 overall, Mansour Delane out of Virginia Tech, number 38 overall, Jack Pyburn, the edge from Florida, number 45 overall, Braylon Moore, the center from Virginia Tech, more on him in a second, at number 50. That's 5 players in the top 50. You didn't have a single in the top 100 last year. Jakeem Jackson at 73, Michael Van Buren, the quarterback, at number 100. That is 7 players. 7 of your 9 are in the top 100. Last year, you did not have a single transfer in the top 100. Jamari Butler at 134 and Bauer Sharp at number 140. That's from 24/7. For what it's worth, On3 rates Bauer Sharp in the top 100. Anyway, the point being, you are looking at, or not in the top 100, he's among the top tight ends, but you're talking about all 9 in the top 140, 7 in the top 100. You have gone and added impact guys this portal cycle. Brian Kelly said they were going to be aggressive in the portal. True to his word, they have been. And not only that, but the fiscal responsibility LSU showed in not getting into the bidding war for Bryce Underwood, in not getting into the bidding war, stepping away on the Jakeem Stewart conversation, in allowing Cade Phillips to go to Texas and not overpaying for him. That freed up roughly $2 million in cash that LSU was able to allocate to this portal cycle, and now you are seeing the benefits of this portal cycle. Now, we have talked here on Locked on LSU about wants, needs, and musts. If you're an everydayer, thank you for that. And if you're not an everydayer, you should be. But we've talked about wants, needs, and musts throughout this portal cycle. A want would be like running back. You know, if you could add an experienced running back, great. But I love having Caden Durham back. You're adding 2 freshmen. It looks like Caleb Jackson is coming back as well. Remember, you moved Juwan Johnson to running back, and maybe Trey Holly comes back. So you've got a lot of options there. Would you love someone who's maybe a little more veteran experience? Sure, but kind of the Josh Williams role, but it's not a need. It's just a want. You can look at needs. We talked about needs, and I could maybe look at adding a veteran linebacker as a need. Not something you absolutely have to do, but if you could add an inside off-ball backer, great. But looks like Harold Perkins may be coming back. You've got both West and Whit Weeks coming back. You're losing Greg Penn, but man, Devon Keys took a big step this year. You've added a couple of freshman linebackers as well. So would you love to maybe add an experienced linebacker? Sure, but it's not something that you can't go into next year without doing. The musts were positions like receiver, losing 3 of your top 4 pass catchers. Tight end, where the only scholarship tight end you had on the roster was J.D. LaFleur, the freshman coming in. You couldn't kick off against Clemson next year without adding a veteran tight end. And I look at other spots on the field that were absolute musts. And, safety is on that list. And LSU has gone after safeties. It's just been more difficult, I think, than they anticipated right now. And look, they've taken their swing. Dylan Thieneman was the number 1 safety in the transfer portal from Purdue, 100 tackle guy, back-to-back seasons. He picked Oregon. Okay, you're not going to get them all. I mean, it kind of contrary to what we've seen, where LSU seemingly is getting them all. You're not going to get every player, but Thieneman picked picked Oregon. Zachariah Poyser from Jacksonville State was another guy highly sought after in the portal. You had him on campus for a visit. It was a kid from the state of Florida. The initial reports were Florida, Auburn, LSU. Well, he ends up staying in the state of Florida, but he picked Miami. There's one more safety that was on campus reportedly early this week, and it's Tawfiq Bayard. So this is another one worth watching. So Tawfiq Bayard, if the name sounds familiar, the last name sounds familiar, it should. He's the younger brother of NFL All-Pro safety Kevin Bayard. So he comes from good stock. So he signed with the University of South Florida down in Tampa. As a freshman, played sparingly in 2023, just 5 tackles. Became a starter here in 2024 and tallied 54 tackles, 2 sacks, and an interception. So not the caliber of safety we were talking about with the other 2 guys, but still a veteran safety that was a productive player this year. Remember, at safety, Sage Ryan has entered the transfer portal, Major Burns out of eligibility, and you're returning Jordan Gilbert, who really had a very disappointing season. Now, look, he had shoulder issues. He dislocated his shoulder, and he played through a shoulder injury, and I think that really affected him throughout the season. But nonetheless, it wasn't great. I'm still very bullish on Deshaun Spears, who played a lot early as a freshman. At about the halfway point of the season, they decided to go with the veterans, and the young guy saw his playing time wane. I think he's got a super high ceiling. But again, could you go out there with Jordan Gilbert and Deshaun Spears? Yes. But in the portal era, the rules allow you to go get better immediately. And if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. That is just an objective fact. There is no staying the same. You're getting better, you're getting worse. So the rules allow you to go be aggressive and get a safety. Go get a safety. Now, one conversation I did have with someone close to LSU, let's call it close to LSU's strategy in the portal, is they're resigned to the fact that if they don't get Tawfiq Bayard, we'll see how that goes, but missing on Thieneman and Poyser, they may have to wait until after the college football playoff, because there are games this weekend, and 4 of the college football playoff teams will be eliminated from the field after Saturday. Remember, the portal window stays open until the 28th. So that's the end of next week. So 4 teams will see their season come to an end this weekend. It is possible that you could have a safety jump in the portal after the season comes to an end this weekend. So don't look at the total number of players in the portal right now and think that's it. That's the crop you're choosing from. There's always the possibility as well that you look in the spring portal window. I know I always mention Joe Burrow, who's the most famous example of this, but last year you also added JVR Suggs in the spring portal window as well. You added Blake Oxendorf in the spring portal window. So there are still options to add to the roster after spring football if need be. But as far as looking at the top tier players at a position of need, that's starting to thin out as of right now. But we will certainly keep an eye on it. Of course, offensive line is the other spot that is really an absolute must at this point. And we've been hearing about Braylon Moore for some time, and I am told that that is effectively done. For whatever reason, they just haven't announced it yet. Maybe it's an opportunity for him to sign his grant and aid paperwork and LSU announce it. But Braylon Moore, the center from Virginia Tech, who we've been talking about for some time now, every service has him 100% crystal ball to LSU. Now, I do get a little leery because until it's actually done, the paperwork is signed, and LSU has announced that he is an LSU Tiger, you never quite know. I mean, we have seen some examples of guys that were thought to be Jaheim Otis is a great example of this. Defensive lineman from Alabama. When he went into the portal, it was 100% crystal ball to Ole Miss. That's what everybody thought. Well, on Tuesday, he signed with Colorado. So until it's done, it's not exactly done, but I do expect Braylon Moore to get done. And the other thing I'll tell you that I have been told, I do not have a name for you, but I am told LSU is going to add a Power 5 offensive tackle in the transfer portal as well. So expect them to add Braylon Moore and expect a Power 5, a starting Power 5 offensive tackle, a very highly coveted Power 5 offensive tackle in the transfer portal. So you get a center in Braylon Moore. That allows you to move DJ Chester to guard. Paul Mabenga played a good amount of guard for you this year. You could also play Bo Bordelon at guard if need be. If you're able to get a transfer portal tackle, amazing. That leaves Tyree Adams, Weston Davis competing for the other tackle job. And you like that. Now you've got some experience. You've got some depth. You've got a lot of talent. And you got a great offensive line coach in Brad Davis to develop them all. So Tigers have 9 right now, and they ain't done. But keep an eye on offensive line and safety because that's very likely what's next. Okay, the men and women's basketball teams both roll. We'll give you a little thumbnail of how those games went when we wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. It is that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the College Football Playoff Kickoff Show, presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by AT&T live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Really productive day for the basketball Tigers, both the LSU men and the women. Kim Mulkey's squad was playing in the against Seton Hall in the Hall of Fame Classic up in the state of Connecticut, and LSU went bonkers. They beat Seton Hall 91-64, a game where LSU was never really challenged. Tigers led by 7 after the first quarter, and they were up 52-25 at halftime, and they were able to coast the rest of the way. 91-64 was the final. Anissa Morrow, 24 points, 18 rebounds, and LSU routed, ranked number 5 in the country right now, routed Seton Hall at the Basketball Hall of Fame Women's Showcase. Michaela Williams, by the way, continues her torrid pace after a little bump early in the season. 22 points for the sophomore Michaela Williams. LSU moves to 13-0. Really talented trio for LSU with Williams, Morrow, and Flaugier leading the way. Obviously one of the top teams in the country. And LSU, in the first quarter, was a 2-point game with 48 seconds left in the first. And then LSU went on to score 22 of the next 26, and it just never got close from there. So LSU will visit Illinois, Chicago on Thursday, and will be a homecoming game for Anissa Morrow, which is a very cool thing, right? They just played up at I played Grambling in Shreveport, North Louisiana, sort of a homecoming for Michaela Williams. Now they'll do the same thing for Anissa Morrow. I really like that Kim Mulkey does that for her players. It did it with Angel Reese as well, going to play a game in Maryland to get her home. So a very cool thing for the Tigers to do. 13-0, number 5 in the country. And the men's team with a nice bounce back, but as we said, they were playing Stetson, who is one of the worst basketball teams in the country. They came into this when Stetson did with a net ranking of 335. Am I remember that correctly? I'm trying to do it off the top, and I had it written down. But anyway, out of 364, I think they were they were 355 out of 364. There are only 9 teams in the country with a lower net ranking than Stetson. So this is a game that you anticipated LSU was going to roll, and they did. Cam Carter, Victorious Miller each had 16. Jai Bailey added 14, and the Tigers were never really threatened. We talked about LSU's slow starts. This was not the case. LSU led this game at half, 47-10. Stetson had 10 points at half. It was 47-10. It was never competitive. Tigers outscored Stetson in the second half 52-43 when they took their feet off the gas. But LSU has played 7 of the first 11 at home. They'll be back at home on Sunday to take on UNO. Like we said, the Tigers should not be threatened in any of these remaining non-conference games. Stetson, UNO, and Mississippi Valley are 3 of the worst teams in college basketball. By the net ranking, Mississippi Valley is the worst team in college basketball. So Tigers have an opportunity to get a couple more wins before you start conference play. And I don't know if you noticed, but the SEC on Tuesday absolutely went bonkers again. This is just... the SEC makes up half of the top 10 right now. That's what you expect in college baseball. It's what you expect in college football. You don't expect it in college basketball. But Tennessee beat Western Carolina 84-36. Let me say that again. 84-36. Auburn hung 100 on Georgia State, 159, beat them by 41. Florida beat North Carolina 90-84. It was a game Florida led by 12 at half. North Carolina closed the gap, but the Gators win by 6. Ole Miss beat Southern by 13. South Carolina beat Clemson, number 25 Clemson, 91-88. Mississippi State rolled over Central Michigan, and Missouri blasted Jacksonville State. So you're talking about the deepest, most talented I have ever seen the SEC in basketball, certainly in my lifetime. Maybe there's some old heads that could remember a better time. The league has been better than it is right now, but LSU's got its work cut out for it. We've said it a ton. Win these non-conference games, find a way to scratch and claw and see if you can get yourself to at or just below 500 in league play. That'll put you right about 20 wins. And with the strength of schedule of this league, that should be enough to hear your name called on Selection Sunday, but you cannot afford a bad loss. So go roll over these next 2 opponents, get yourself to 11 wins, and see what kind of hay you can make in the regular season and the conference tournament. So the men and women's basketball teams both get wins on Tuesday. All right, it's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked on LSU, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. And now for your second listen, go check out my guy Chris Gordy on Locked on SEC. On podcast or YouTube. Hey, if you are listening on podcast, thanks so much. Thanks for being an everydayer. We appreciate y'all. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us. Leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Remember, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is to leave your comments below. And as always, let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.